everybody, welcome back to my channel, Clay Soil. My name is Pernie and it's so good to see you. So today's a very exciting day because I'm starting a new series called Know Before You Grow. Actually, it's one of the few other series that I'm going to be premiering soon on my channel. And the Know Before You Grow series is a plant care series. So whenever you come back to my channel, you can always go to the Know Before You Grow series to find out care information for various plants. I have a lot of ideas and a lot of plant care videos that I'm going to be recording from now on, and so I thought this would be a great way to group everything. So yeah, it's super exciting, and I hope that you enjoy this content and hopefully you learn something from it. If you're not part of the Clay Soil family, I would love for you to consider subscribing to my channel, and you can click on the bell icon so that you'll be notified every time I upload new content. And also, if you like, you can follow me on Instagram at Clay Soil Pernie. So enough of that chit chat. Let's get right into the video. Today's video is about how to care for your Philodendron Pastasazanum, and I'm kind of excited to do this video because I feel like I can show you a lot about this plant, because currently I don't have it in soil. I have it right now sitting in sphagnum moss. So I can show you a lot of things about this plant that I feel like you can benefit from. So let's just get right into this. Here are a few general facts about the Pastasazanum that I think you should be aware of. So the cool thing about this plant is that it is a sprawling terrestrial plant. What that means is that they develop stems creeping along the ground while growing towards the earth. In nature, Pastasazanums grow in areas of valleys, cliffs, streams, and wet areas of the rainforest, essentially. Now let's talk about the actual appearance of Philodendron Pastasazanums. Let's start by talking about what the characteristics of the leaf, and then we'll go into talking about the petiole, and then we'll go into the care tips for it. So currently I have it in sphagnum moss because I'm in the process of making sure it doesn't die. I almost killed this plant by planting it in too much soil and too big of a pot for it. So when I saw that it was starting to die, I took it out of soil and I put it in moss, which we will talk about later. But now I have 4 leaves growing, and then I have also along the stem, I have like 2 other nodes that will eventually become more leaves. But so let's just talk right now about what the leaves look like, and then we'll go from there. Let me just take it out of the soil. That way I can talk to you freely with it in my hand. Okay, so now that we have it out of the sphagnum moss, let's get right into it. Now let's talk about the shape of the leaves, okay? So you can see I have 3 older leaves, and this is a newer leaf that hasn't hardened yet. So when you have a new unfurled leaf, it'll be like a lemon lime color, and that's because it hasn't hardened yet. So you can tell the difference between the weight of it too. It's a lot lighter, and it's light green. That's how I know it's a new unfurled leaf, whereas these are more hardened leaves. And with hardened leaves, the leaf blades are somewhat leathery in texture. They're not like a thicker philodendron or velvety. The front of the leaf tends to be dark green in color, and it can be anywhere from glossy to semi-glossy to matte, while the back of the leaf will be paler in color, and it can be glossy or semi-glossy. So it just depends on that leaf. Most of the times people will say these are like heart-shaped, like your gloriosums and sodurai and palmeni and all the other philodendrons that are there, but these are actually ovate, which just means like an egg shape or oval shape. They can also be a shield-like shape. But usually you see those in more like a more mature, older specimen. So like for most of us, we'll see it in that like heart-shaped or ovate. Now the apex, which is this tip right here, in Pastazanums, the leaf apex tends to be V-shaped, and it can range from 11 to 25 inches long and 7 to 19 inches wide. So as these plants mature, this apex will obviously, be more of a V shape, but it'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger, if that makes sense. So now let's talk about the petioles of a pastazanum. And petioles are a good way to also figure out which plant it is, because the petioles, believe it or not, of a lot of these philodendrons that we love have very unique markings or edging, or as they say, margins. So that way it could tell you which philodendron you have. Now I know because mine is like super juvenile, you can't tell, but one way to know that you have a pastazanum, as this plant matures and grows, the petioles of this plant will be cylindrical and will be 15 to 50 inches long, and it will be 1/4 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch in diameter, so like thickness of it. So it's a pretty hardy stalk, which it has to be because the leaves get so big that they need petioles that can hold up that big piece of leaf, essentially. So right now my petioles are light green in color, but as it matures, it's going to have dark green petioles that are semi-glossy, and it'll actually have, and I'll insert a photo, it'll have like longitudinal white stripes all along the petiole. Moving on, now we're going to talk about soil that you need for this type of plant. And now, like every other philodendron that you have, this also requires a very airy, chunky aeroid mix. Like that is so important to this plant, because if it's sitting in soggy, wet soil that doesn't dry out fast enough, it's going to kill the roots. And that's exactly what happened with some of these older roots, like they're dead. But because I put it in sphagnum moss, look at all the new roots that grew. So you see the difference? You want it to look like this. You don't want it to look like this. So make sure that you have it in a very chunky aeroid mix. So use orchid bark, use pumice, perlite, use sphagnum moss, like use things that are going to aerate your soil. Let's talk about potting up your pastazanum, and I think this is a very important topic to cover when it comes to terrestrial philodendrons, because this is how I think a lot of people who never had this type of plant will end up killing it. And that's exactly what you don't want to do, right? So when you're about to plant this in the soil, make sure that this green stem right here is sitting above the soil. So all these roots can be planted into the soil, but if you plant this stem, it's going to rot. Okay, so this green stem will need to like be above the soil. So where my finger is, imagine that's where your soil is going to start. And everything else above my finger needs to be above your soil. Everything under my finger needs to be under soil. How this plant will grow is horizontally. So I would say use a rectangular planter. Don't use a round plant pot, because it's just going to eventually try to escape your pot and then go into some other pot if it's near another plant. So instead, get a rectangular planter and plant it in that, and then just let it keep growing the way it wants to, which is, usually it grows on the ground, like a ground cover. Think about it that way. It's like a ground cover. When it comes to lighting for this plant, you want to make sure you keep this in an area in your home where it'll get bright and direct light during the daytime, because that's what it needs to keep performing and functioning well. If you put it in direct light, it will burn the leaves. And also, like, some of us don't have the luxury of having like a south facing window or east or west. You live in an apartment that doesn't have a lot of good lighting, then use a grow light, and that should help a lot. I know a lot of people who use grow lights and they have great results. So if you have it, make sure you're putting it in a spot where it gets bright indirect light. Let's move forward to watering needs of this plant. Just like every other philodendron, it does not like to be wet all the time. So you want to make sure that your Philodendron Pastazanum is pretty dry before you water it again. The general rule of thumb is you stick your finger in, and if the top 2 inches of your soil is dry, then you can water it. I like to let it dry out a little bit more, where if I stick half of my finger into the soil, it's dry. I like that method, and then I just water until I start seeing water come up from the bottom. That's my general watering. I will say right now I'm watering every week and a half. And then also I would like to mention your watering needs will be different based on your home. Like, again, watering depends on the amount of lighting you have at home, the level of humidity you get, what part of the country or the world you live in. Do you live in a colder climate or a hotter climate or neutral? Like, it just depends, and that's something that you're gonna have to try and figure out for yourself. Okay, so let's talk about the temperature that these pastazanums thrive in. So these plants are tropical by nature, so of course they're gonna want tropical environment, and we can do our best to give them that. Thankfully, it's not like a super fussy plant like some other plants can be, so it'll adjust. Maybe in the beginning when you first get it, it might kind of like whine and complain about being in your environment, but eventually it'll adjust to what you give it. So this plant thrives in temperatures between 55 degrees and 80 degrees. Now, if you have it in temperatures below 55, obviously the plant will die because it can't handle the cold. But then it also goes the same way for when it gets too hot. Like, they love tropical weather, but they're not, in their general environment, they're not in like scorching heat. So like in LA, I can't put it outside on a 85 degree day here because it will burn the leaves so bad. So just make sure your temperature based on what time of the year it is around 55 to 80 degrees. Moving along to fertilizers. Make sure you use a well-balanced fertilizer for your pastazanum plant. You can either use a liquid fertilizer or a slow-release fertilizer. I don't have experience using slow-release fertilizer, but I do use liquid, and during the growing season, I tend to fertilize once a month. So what I also think the plant will benefit a lot from is warm casting, and how you can use this is when you're making a potting mixture for your plant, just go ahead and toss a couple of sprinkles of warm casting into the soil. Warm casting can replenish a lot of nutrients that this plant would generally get in nature. Also, I want to mention that the crumbly texture of warm casting also helps aerate the soil, which is obviously great for your plant. And I cannot stress, during the growing season, fertilize your plant once a month, but when it's cooler months, make sure you do not fertilize it at all. When it comes to propagation, there are a few different methods of propagating this plant, but I haven't tried a lot of these propagations. But there's a few ways. You can do stem cuttings, you can do leaf cuttings, you can do water propagation, but I feel like a lot of people do the stem cutting propagation. And how that works is, do you see that white? That's a node right there. To make sure that you get a successful propagation, you want to make sure you have at least one node, and then I also have another node here somewhere. I think that's a node down there. but I'm not sure. So I at least have this node right here, and what I would do is you want to make sure you have at least a few roots around where the node is, and you would chop it, like make sure you get like a 1 inch chunk, and then you can just wrap it in sphagnum moss like I have, and then just put it in a plastic Ziploc bag, or in my case, I'm using a tampon plastic box that I'm reusing and recycling, and it's kind of creating like a humidity dome for it, and you can just propagate it like that, and every cup, make sure you keep the sphagnum moss moist. If you want to know how to propagate this in sphagnum moss, just watch my previous video. I talk about it in depth. But yeah, you just cut the chunk, make sure you have some roots so that it will propagate faster and more successful. As for pests and disease, thankfully I haven't experienced these pests because I have it in a closed box in sphagnum moss. But some of the pests that you can experience with this plant is spider mites, mealybugs, thrips, scales, or whiteflies. There are many websites out there that's going to tell you how to care for this plant if you do get one of these pests on your leaf. But I will mention the best way you can make sure that you are not introducing this into your plant is, like, if you get new plants, quarantine them. Don't just go ahead and put them right next to your established plants. You can also encounter yellow leaves and brown leaves. So yellow leaves means you're overwatering your pastazanum, or it's staying soggy in the soil for too long, which is not good because that means you're killing your roots. If your leaves are ever yellowing, just make sure you take it out of the soil and add more aeration to that soil with different types of amendments. And then the flip side of that is, if you're getting brown leaves, that means you're waiting too long to water your plant and it's dying. So either way, yellow leaves or brown leaves, you're killing the plant either by overwatering or underwatering. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that I was able to answer some of your questions about what kind of care you need to give to your pastazanum. I'm so excited for you to have your own pastazanum. If you're watching this, that means you're a new plant mom or dad to a pastazanum. So I'm really excited for you. Take it one day at a time. Don't rush. Just take your time. Don't overthink it. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, and also leave me any comments below if you have any cool tips or tricks that you do to keep your pastazanum live and healthy and thriving. Comment down below. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon so you can get notified of new content. And I hope to see you on Instagram at ClaySoilPernie. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.